Welcome friends to the second part of jaundice. Today we are going to start with the hepatic jaundice. In the previous lecture, we have gone through the definition of jaundice, which means there is a deposition of bilirubin in different parts like skin, mucous membrane and sclera, where the given quantity of bilirubin present in blood exceeds 2 milligram per deciliter of blood. The causes or the classification of jaundice was done in three types, that is pre-hepatic, hepatic and post-hepatic. We have discussed about the pre-hepatic, also known as the hemolytic jaundice. Today we are going to start with the hepatic jaundice. So this type of jaundice, where the basic defect lies in the capturing, conjugation and excretion of bilirubin. So there is some problem associated with liver, which is not able to capture the unconjugated bilirubin, conjugate it and excrete it, which causes an increase in the amount of bilirubin and its deposition all over the body. Any pathology of liver leading to defect in this conjugation, which is basically done by this particular enzyme, UDP glucuronide transferase enzyme, will cause hepatic jaundice. It is very common in the neonates or the newly born children, and it is termed as a physiological jaundice. Further, this enzyme can be defectively produced because there is some mutation or some changes in the gene which codes for this particular enzyme. This particular gene codes for UDP glucuronide transferase, and thus the defective conjugation enzymes lead to hepatic jaundice. Any defect in the hepatic excretory mechanism of bilirubin can also cause hepatic jaundice. The excretory mechanism includes hepatocystic bile acid independent secretion, hepatocystic bile acid dependent secretion and bile ductular secretion. This part you might have gone through the physiology. Any defect in the above mentioned excretory mechanism can lead to accumulation of bilirubin in blood, causing hepatic jaundice. Hepatic jaundice is caused due to defect in the capture, conjugation and excretion of bilirubin by liver, and it can be classified in two types. The causes can be classified in two types, that is the congenital and the acquired. The congenital causes, the list is mentioned here: the Wilson's disease, copper accumulation, Rutter syndrome, there is some disorder with the bilirubin production, hemochromatosis, that is an iron level or there is a deposition of excess of iron in body, Crigler-Najjar syndrome, that is mutation in the UGT1A1 gene present on chromosome 2, Gilbert syndrome and Duncan-Johnson syndrome are all associated with hepatic jaundice. Acquired causes can be viral hepatitis, alcoholic hepatitis, autoimmune hepatitis, drug-related hepatitis, sepsis, pregnancy, systemic diseases like celiac diseases, malnutrition, physical trauma, hepatic adenoma. These all diseases overall affects the health of the liver. And if the liver is not functioning properly, obviously the function of capturing, conjugation and excretion of bilirubin will not be as much affected. The clinical presentation of hepatic jaundice includes abdominal pain, fever, vomiting, nausea, along with complications involving ascites, gastrointestinal bleeding, diarrhea, anemia, edema, weight loss, and associated weakness. If unchecked, leading to mental disturbance like kernicterus in form of brain damage by excessive jaundice, coma, and even death. Now we will discuss about the post-hepatic jaundice. Post-hepatic jaundice is such type of jaundice in which the cause lies in the biliary portion of hepatobiliary system. The major cause of post-hepatic jaundice is extrahepatic biliary obstruction. There is some obstruction in the drainage system which is carrying the bile juice to the small intestine. This obstruction is the major cause, and so it turns out to be the other name for post-hepatic jaundice, that is obstructive jaundice. The causes obviously again would be classified into two parts, that is the congenital cause and the acquired cause. So the congenital cause is biliary atresia, cystic fibrosis, idiopathic dilatation of common bile duct, pancreatic biliary malformation and choledochyle cyst. Acquired causes can be of so many types. It is portal biliopathy, cholecystitis, trauma, pancreatitis, strictures, cholelithiasis, AIDS, intra-abdominal tuberculosis, tumors, and common bile duct obstructions. The clinical manifestation of obstructive jaundice are dark urine, pale stool, and generalized pruritus. Obviously, this dark urine is due to excessive amount of urobilinogen being absorbed from either the gallbladder, and the pale stool is due to non-secretion of bile juice coming into the intestine. History of fever, biliary colic, weight loss, abdominal pain and abdominal mass are also the representative of obstructive jaundice. Obstructive jaundice may lead to various complications including cholangitis, pancreatitis, renal and hepatic failures. Now this is a chart which is showing difference between the three types of jaundice in terms of various indicators. Some are related to the urine and some are related to the blood. Some are familiar to you because we have already learned about the liver function test in which we were discussing about the bilirubin, which was of two types, conjugated and unconjugated. So direct bilirubin is the conjugated, indirect bilirubin is the unconjugated. AST, ALT stand for SGOT and SGPT, and the last is given ALP and GGTP, that is alkaline phosphatase and gamma glutamine transaminase. So what is the difference between all these three? We'll look one by one. First we'll consider the presence of bilirubin, direct and indirect. Mind you, direct is the conjugated one and indirect is the unconjugated one. For hemolytic jaundice, that is the pre-hepatic jaundice, conjugated is normal, unconjugated is increased, which is fairly understood because hemolysis is causing increase in the amount of unconjugated bilirubin. In case of obstructive jaundice, the direct or the conjugated bilirubin has increased. Why has it been increased? Because the conjugated one is not able to cross or go beyond the obstruction and get released into the small intestine. So the direct one, whereas the indirect one or the unconjugated still remains the normal because the frequency with which the RBCs are broken or the heme is produced still remains the normal. Then comes the hepatocellular jaundice in which both of them, that is the indirect and the direct, will be found increased. In terms of SGOT and ED, pre-hepatic causes, that is the pre-hepatic jaundice, it remains normal. In case of hepatic, it can be obstructive, it can be normal, mild or increased depending where the location of obstruction is present. And in case of hepatocellular, it would be always increased because in hepatic jaundice there is some destruction of hepatocytes. Then comes ALP and GGTP. In hemolytic it is normal, obstructive jaundice it is markedly increased, and in hepatocellular jaundice there is normal, mild or increased. Whereas when we come to the urine analysis, in hemolytic jaundice urobilinogen is increased and bilirubin stands out to be nil. Obstructive jaundice, bilirubin is decreased or absent, whereas in urine bilirubin may be present. Hepatocellular jaundice decreased and here it is present. So this is a comparative chart. You can sit and have a look on it. Next topic of discussion is neonatal jaundice. Jaundice is the most common morbidity in the first week of life, occurring in 60% of term and 80% of preterm newborn. Term means it is completion of the complete cycle of pregnancy, and preterm means when the delivery occurs before that particular term. Jaundice is the most common cause of readmission after discharge from birth hospitalization. Jaundice in neonates is visible in skin and eyes when the total bilirubin concentration exceeds 5 to 7 milligrams per deciliter of blood. And if you remember, in adults the benchmark was around 2. In contrast, adults have jaundice visible in eye where the total serum bilirubin concentration exceeds 2 milligrams per deciliter of blood. Increased total serum bilirubin concentration in neonates result from varying contribution of three factors, namely increased production from degradation of RBC, decreased clearance by the immature hepatic mechanism, and reabsorption by enterohepatic circulation. So the three factors are: first, your RBCs are getting more destroyed. Second, the neonates level is not sufficiently mature to process that amount of bilirubin, and if it is processing a bit, the circulatory system is reabsorbing it and again dumping it into the blood. So physiological versus pathological jaundice. We will discuss about the Kramer's signs for the neonatal jaundice at the end. But we need to understand about the physiological versus the pathological jaundice, because in cases of neonatal jaundice, you need to understand what is physiological. Is it common in small children to face symptoms of jaundice, or it's not common, and how do we differentiate it? So physiological jaundice, it is non-pathological unconjugated hyperbilirubinemia term infants. Those infants which were born by taking the full course of pregnancy. 50 to 60% of all newborns are jaundiced in the first week of life. Total serum bilirubin peaks at age of 3 to 5 days. Mean peak total serum bilirubin is 6 milligrams per deciliter of blood. In preterm infants, incidence of visible jaundice is much higher than in the preterm. Peak is later, that is 5 to 7 days, whereas here you will find in 3 to 5 days only. Because of the high risk of bilirubin encephalopathy, physiological jaundice more difficult to define, and jaundice should be followed closely. So, see, one gets this feeling that if it's inevitable that it will occur in the children, can we leave it unattended? Because there is a very fine line of marking where the normal levels of 6 milligrams or approximately close to it would cross and become the pathological value where it can cause encephalopathy or damage to the brain. Jaundice attributes to physiological immaturity of neonates to handle increased bilirubin production in terms of physiological jaundice. Visible jaundice usually appears between 24 to 72 hours of age, that is somewhere to 34th day of life. Total serum bilirubin level usually rise in term infants to peak of 12 to 15 milligrams by 3 days of age and then falls. In preterm infants, the peak level occurs at 3 to 7 days of age and total serum bilirubin can rise over 15 milligrams per deciliter. It may take weeks before the total serum bilirubin level falls under 2 milligrams per deciliter of blood in both term and preterm infant. Pathological jaundice is said to be present. You should be very attentive at this part. The pathological jaundice is said to be present when total serum bilirubin concentration are not in physiological jaundice range, which is defined arbitrarily and loosely to be more than 5 milligrams per deciliter on first day, 10 milligrams on second day, and 12 to 13 milligrams on and thereafter in term neonates. To any total serum bilirubin value of 17 or more should be regarded as pathologic and should be evaluated for causes and possible intervention such as phototherapy. Now, the problem is once a child develops this symptom, it is very difficult to ascertain just by looking whether the level of bilirubin is within the physiological range or it has across the pathological way. So regular monitoring is required and proper therapy would also be required. Visible jaundice in first 24 hours of life. However, slight jaundice on face at the end of first day is common and can be considered physiological. Presence of jaundice on arm on day 2. Yellow palm and soles anytime. Serum bilirubin concentration increases more than 0.2 milligrams per deciliter per hour or more than 5 milligrams per deciliter in 24 hours. If total serum bilirubin concentration more than the 95th centile as per age specific bilirubin nomogram, sign of acute bilirubin encephalopathy, direct bilirubin more than 1.5 to 2 milligram per deciliter, clinical jaundice persisting beyond 2 weeks in term and 3 weeks in preterm neonates, all cause for pathological jaundice in which the visible sign can be canicterus, which is a sign which is visible as a part of encephalopathy. Causes of pathological jaundice: hemolysis is the first cause. The blood group incompatibility, such as those of ABO and RH, and we have also seen the other causes like G6PD, glucose 6 phosphatase deficiency, autoimmune hemolytic anemia, decreased conjugation such as prematurity, increased enterohepatic circulation such as lack of adequate maternal feeding, include insufficient breastfeeding, or the infant not being fed because of illness and GI obstruction. The parent should be counseled regarding benign nature of jaundice in most neonates and for the need to be watchful and seek help if the baby appears to be yellow. The parent should be explained about how to see for jaundice in babies in natural light and without any yellow background. So this is very much necessary. If you are examining the child, even if you are examining the child at your clinic or as a practitioner you are observing, always observe for the sign of jaundice under natural light, not under the artificial light or any light which is yellow in color. It could give you misleading results. The neonates at higher risk of jaundice should be identified at birth and kept under enhanced surveillance for occurrence and progression of jaundice. These infants include gestation less than 38 weeks, 38 weeks is the term. Previously, baby with significant jaundice, visible jaundice in first 24 hours. Some other causes also include inadequate breastfeeding, which causes exaggerated jaundice during initial few days. Breastfeeding problems such as improper positioning and attachment, cracked or sore nipples, engorgement, perceived inadequate of milk production are very common and require intense and sustained support from health professionals caring mothers and babies. Breastfeeding support must include, in addition to providing adequate information, actually helping the mothers to learn proper position and attachment and adequate measure to address the breastfeeding problems. Yes, this is the visual assessment of a neonate for the different levels of jaundice and how much is the level of jaundice developed in it. If it's only the head part and the neck part which is involved, this is level 1 which is having 4 to 8 milligrams. Then if upper trunk is involved above the umbilicus, it is level 2, 5 to 12. Then the lower trunk and thighs are involved, it is level 3, 8 to 16. We are fine with it. There is no problem. Then comes the arms and the lower limb and palms and soles, which have a value between 11 to 18 and more than 18, which calls obviously for the pathological jaundice. That's all with the jaundice part, and this is one of the diseases associated with liver. Thank you, and we'll come back later with more classes.